morning. You can see I have a little paint kit here at home. It's a lot like yours. Mine are square. Yours are oval. And I am using the sketchbook paper. This is just my experimentation from last week. And I am going to go ahead and just flip it over and use the back today. So you go ahead and use another one of these sheets. We'll only use one side. Today our focus is going to be learning how to paint, how to control the paint, and learning a few painting techniques. So I'm going to show you a couple of techniques, and then you're going to practice those techniques on your own paper. And the one thing you're going to need to find at home is a water container. So you can see here I have a water container. I've gone and gotten some water. This is just an old yogurt container. So you can just use something that you are going to throw away or recycle. Yogurt containers work really well. Any plastic container from something like sour cream or margarine or dip, or a small bowl or cup that you're not going to bring back to the kitchen to use for food again. Once it's used for paint, it shouldn't be used for food anymore. So make sure that you pick something that you can keep with your art supplies. The other thing that you'll need is maybe a piece of paper towel. I just use this as an old washcloth, and I just have this in my studio as my painting rag for just some different techniques and things. So you'll need those couple of things that weren't a part of the kit, and then you're going to need your paint, obviously. One thing, obviously watercolor paint is paint, and it is dry. So look, I can touch this and not get painty because there's no water in here right now. Water is a necessary part of working with watercolor paint. And in order for these colors to like activate or turn into paint, they have to have water. So you can see I have my little paintbrush. It's the same paintbrush I gave you guys. And what I'm going to do to start with is just squeeze or drip a little bit of water into the colors that I think I'm going to use today. So it doesn't have to be all the colors. You can experiment with the different colors today. Maybe not going to use yellow is the color that you're going to want to be careful about. It's the color that you'll probably run out of the quickest. So I'm going to try to like kind of limit my use of yellow, and you guys should do the same thing. I am just kind of dripping some water into a couple of different colors today so I can experiment with a couple of different colors. We're going to work with some rectangles on our sheet. If you happen to have tape at home, you can use tape to divide sections. You definitely don't have to use tape. So if I were to use tape, I can do something like this. I can take my tape and I can separate some shapes on my paper. I can't find the end of the tape. There we go. If I don't have tape at home, I do not need tape. So here, if I were to use tape, that would be, I would just divide this whole section into like 6 rectangles. If I don't have tape, what I'm going to do is divide this into 6 rectangles still, but I'm just going to go ahead and use a pencil. And I'm going to make sure that I leave space. So notice that I have this little white area between my rectangles. what that will do is it will keep my paint from leaking into my paint. I want to keep my rectangles of paint separate from each other. So either way, you're going to either divide it with tape if you happen to have tape. If you don't have tape, don't stress. Go ahead and make 6 rectangles on your sheet with a pencil. And we are going to simply start by making something called a wash. So a wash is the method that we use to apply paint to the piece of paper. And I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this blue, which should have soaked up some of the water by now. And I'm going to mix it out here on my mixing tray. Maybe add in a little bit more water. So watercolor is darker the more water you use. So more water equals more color, darker, lighter, more water, darker, more paint. So more licks out of the paint thing means darker paint. More water means lighter paint. But I need a little bit of a pile of paint up here so that I have enough paint to work from. And what I'm going to do is you can see I'm holding up the piece of paper and I'm just going to paint across the sheet. And now when I run out of paint, I'm going to grab a little bit more. And a little bit more. These paintbrushes are a little bit small, but we're going to make them work. And there I painted, this is called a wash in watercolor. And you can see over here on this left-hand side where it's a little bit juicier as as I pulled my paint across, and a little bit drier over here as my paintbrush dried out as I pulled. I can kind of let that drift down a little bit. There is watercolor, because it's a water-based supply, the color moves with the water. So if I take a different color now, like this red, and draw a line through this, you will see that over here where my paint is wet, more wet, this line starts to just drift. Because watercolor moves with the water. And that's a unique property to watercolor that's different than other paints. And it's a property that we will use and sort of make use of as we make some paintings together. The other thing I wanted to show you, and that you should experiment with, is that this little paintbrush is 2 paintbrushes at the same time. I can have a nice wide stripe, and I can turn my paintbrush to the side and have a nice skinny stripe. So I want you to kind of experiment with